Part 157. Blessed to have each other in this life, Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Liao. Chapter 1571. Isn't it just writing a few words on a piece of yellow paper? She can also write. However, what words should I write? Tang Tang bit her pen, thinking seriously. After thinking for a while, I finally made up my mind and started writing. I wrote a dozen or so in one go. When I read it in my hand, I felt that it was not smooth enough, so I wrote a dozen more. After tossing and tossing in the study all afternoon, the room was full of yellow paper. When Gu Liang came in, one of them fell to his feet. He picked it up and looked at it. What is this? Amulet. Tang Tang's voice was full of pride and ambition. She wrote hundreds of pieces, and now she is picking and choosing among them, trying to choose the works she is satisfied with and give them away. Gu Liang helped her choose together. Tang Tang asked him with bright eyes, "Can you see what I wrote?" Yeah, Gu Liang nodded, with a smile on the corner of his mouth. It's written in Tang characters. It's also funny in my heart. How can anyone write their own name on an amulet? Generally, it should be a spell to pray for blessings. No matter how bad it is, writing about the Jade Emperor's appearance is more reliable than your own name, right? Tang Tang was disappointed when she heard this. What? How did you see it? The amulet must be written so that no one can see it. Gu Liang patted her head. Don't worry, others won't recognize it. It's only me. You don't need to know the characters next to it, but you must know this character. Humph, I don't believe it. Tang Tang randomly picked out a card, took it and ran out to ask the servant. The servant did not recognize it. Satisfied, Tang Tang came back happily, picked some of the yellow paper, and folded it into a triangular amulet. The next day she called Tongwu and generously gave him the pile of amulets. Tongwu was a little confused. This is the talisman I gave you, Tang Tang said with a smile on her face. You choose one yourself, and give the rest to others. Tongwu pondered for a moment, and asked her cautiously, is it also for safety? That's right, Tang Tang said. There's only a little bit of evil spirit here, and it won't affect you, but ordinary evil spirits will be afraid, and will automatically retreat when they encounter it. Tongwu hurriedly received the amulet and thanked him repeatedly. This thing is so practical. People like them have experienced a lot of fighting, killing, and it is inevitable that they will be afraid of ghosts knocking on the door in the middle of the night. Seeing him happy, Tang Tang couldn't help but reminded, it doesn't work every time. If you encounter a more powerful evil god, it will become a waste of paper. After finishing speaking, I murmured thoughtfully, but it is probably difficult to meet someone who is stronger than me, right? Tang Tang's amulet has won unanimous praise from the people of the Gu family and has been widely and warmly welcomed. A few days later, Tongwu came again, and asked Tang Tang tactfully if he had any extra amulets. Tang Tang was very happy that the calligraphy work was recognized, and with a wave of his hand, he said proudly, don't worry. You all have it. Isn't it just writing? Writing this is much more refreshing than copying scriptures. Tang Tang frantically wrote 50 or 60 more, folded them and handed them to Tongwu. After a while, Gu Liang found that almost everyone around him had a Tang amulet. There are even servants who sweep the floor at home. When Gu Liang came home at night, he hesitated to say to Tang Tang, that amulet of yours. Before he finished speaking, Tang Tang waved his hands again and again, no more, no more. Find someone else to go, I'm almost sick of writing. Gu Liang held back his anger and dragged her over. You wrote almost 100 for others, but none of them for me. Tang Tang's eyeballs rolled around. Then just wait for me. She got up and ran into the cloakroom, and after a while, she was wrapped in a yellow scarf, bouncing over with her head against his chest. Here, the largest amulet. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1572. In the early spring, the coldness of midwinter remained in the air, and the whole Qingjiang city was immersed in the rain, cold and humid. Gu Liang received an invitation from Lu Yitong and agreed to visit her home on Saturday. Although Lu Yitong's wedding was held abroad, she and her husband also bought real estate in China. The location is not too far from Qingjiang city. I heard that the house was designed by the couple with a friend, and it can be regarded as their love token. By Saturday, the rain had stopped. The air is slightly humid, and the bright spring light fills the vegetation and the streets, giving people a kind of clarity as if the clouds and mists have been pushed away. Gu Liang sat in the car with Tang Tang in his arms. The car had been driving for more than an hour, and it was already far away from the urban area. Tang Tang fell asleep in his arms. He saw a mountain not far away and asked the driver, "What mountain is that?" "Oh, it should be Yanta Mountain. In the past, some students and backpackers often went there to play. It has been overdeveloped in the past 2 years, and not many people go there." Yanta Mountain. Gu Liang still remembered that the first body was found in Yanta Mountain. Later, similar corpses were discovered one after another. Because the cause of death was unknown, the superiors blocked the news for fear of causing panic, so Tongwu did not find out any more clues. And those corpses have never been claimed, and the identity cannot be found out in the DNA matching library, so they can only be treated as unnamed corpses in the end. If those people who died also happened because they came into contact with the cursed painting, Yanta Mountain is indeed a good place to throw their corpses, and there are few people around. On the way, Gu Liang kept thinking about Lu Yitong. It was originally estimated that it would take 2 hours to arrive. Because the mountain road in the second half was difficult to walk, the car drove for 3 hours before finally arriving at the destination. Several steeple-roofed houses stand on the mountainside, and the buildings are closely connected to each other. The heights are scattered and combined together, like a small castle, half hidden in a piece of early spring green, very beautiful. There is no yard in the villa, and the road is just outside the door. Lu Yitong waved at them from a distance and greeted them with a smile. "You are late, but just in time for my afternoon tea." Lu Yitong led Gu Liang and Tang Tang into the room. There were already 6 or 7 guests in the room, men and women, either literary or glamorous, either they were artists themselves or art investors. Seeing Gu Liang, these people all had smiles on their faces, and greeted Gu Liang one after another. Ever since Tang Tang came in, her complexion was very gloomy and sullen. Lu Yitong asked Gu Liang with concern, "I see that your wife's complexion doesn't look very good. Did you get motion sick when you came here?" Gu Liang asked Tang Tang in a low voice, "Are you uncomfortable?" Tang Tang closed her eyes and nodded slightly. "Is there a room where you can rest?" Gu Liang said to Lu Yitong apologetically. "It may be that the mountain road was too winding just now. It should be better if you lie down, and I caused you trouble." "No trouble," Lu Yitong hurriedly said. "I was negligent and forgot to remind you that there is a section of mountain road that is really difficult to walk." Several guests nearby echoed, "The road is quite winding, and we were a little motion sick when we came here, but the scenery on the mountain is very good." Lu Yitong smiled, said "Excuse me," and took Gu Liang and Tang Tang to the guest room where they were resting. The aisle at home is not straight, but twists and turns, like a snake that keeps changing directions. On both sides of the aisle, one side is a window with a view of the mountains and forests, and the other side is a wall with paintings hanging every few meters. Gu Liang took a look. There were Lu Yitong's paintings, and there were also Mo Zhang's paintings. Walking all the way like this is a bit like visiting an art exhibition. "You don't seem to have any servants at home," Gu Liang said casually. "With such a big house, without the help of servants, it would be troublesome to clean it, right?" The expression on Lu Yitong's face froze for a moment. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck." Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Blessed to have each other in this life, Shao, your wife is born again. Author, HandsomeMaleLead. Chapter 1573. Actually, it's okay. Lu Yitong explained with a smile, the air in the mountains is good, there is not so much dust, and the servants usually only clean it once every 2 or 3 days, and my husband is not here, I live alone, and I cook simple meals. That's enough, you don't need too many servants. She continued to walk a few steps forward and opened a door. Let's rest here, I'll ask the servant to bring some hot drinks over. After finishing speaking, Chao Tang smiled and left the room. After Lu Yitong left, Gu Liang opened the window of the room to let fresh air pour in. Is it still uncomfortable? He touched Tang's forehead. It wasn't hot, and his face was still rosy, but his brows were always furrowed, obviously very uncomfortable. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Tang rubbed his forehead against Gu Liang's palm, coquettishly. Uncomfortable, the smell is everywhere, so greasy, I want to vomit. Gu Liang asked, the taste of basiao. Tang nodded. Didn't you eat it before? Gu Liang teased her with a smile, why do you find it disgusting now? It used to be like eating skewers. Tang stroked his chest and said with a complicated expression, but now, I feel like I've fallen into a barbecue, and even my breath is greasy. Okay, don't describe it anymore. Gu Liang couldn't laugh or cry, the more you talk, the more disgusting you are, you should think of something else and divert your attention. Unexpected. Tang pouted, if you kiss me, maybe I can think of something else. Gu Liang knocked on her, don't even think about that kind of thing. Think about something healthy. Tang tilted her head and thought for a while, the green movement is pollution-free, and it feels quite healthy. Gu Liang rubbed her head with a smile. The two talked for a while in the room, and a servant came in with tea and snacks. It's not good for Gu Liang to stay in the house all the time. When he comes to someone's house as a guest, he always has to go out to socialize to be considered decent. He told Tang to rest obediently, left the room by himself, and went to the living room in front. Lu Yitong is very good at maintaining the atmosphere. She is the kind of hostess who can easily make the guest of honor happy. This is a kind of wisdom, but Lu Yitong's wisdom is too utilitarian, so that Gu Liang has always been indifferent to her, whether he likes her or not. Stand up. For example, the guests she invited today are undoubtedly people who can help her re-enter the art circle. After marriage, she was shrouded in the light of Mo Sang, and everyone called her Mo, so that the name Lu Yitong gradually fell silent in the art circle. Even if she wants to produce good works now, she urgently needs the approval and recommendation of insiders. Of course, the best candidate to introduce her is Mo Sang. Lu Yitong is looking far away, either there is something wrong with his marriage, or something wrong with Mo Sang. After chatting for a while in the living room, Lu Yitong led them to visit the studio. He walked the same aisle just now, stopped and walked, and admired the paintings on the wall along the way. At the end of the aisle is a door. When the door is opened, there is a wooden bridge. The wooden bridge is about 30 meters long and connects to a low house with a pointed roof built between rocks and trees. Lu Yitong walked in the front, and explained to the guests behind him with a smile. Mo Zhang insisted on separating the studio from the living area. He thought it was quiet here, and he also said that the works should not be tainted with fireworks. A guest agreed, it should be like this. Every day is entangled with mundane affairs, and people have become tacky. How can they engage in artistic creation? Lu Yitong pursed her lips, and the smile on her face faded a little. Blessed to have each other in this life, Shao, your wife is born again. Author, HandsomeMaleLead. Chapter 1574. The creative room is used by Lu Yitong and Mo Sang, so it is designed to be very spacious and open, about the size of 2 classrooms. Lu Yitong put the scattered paints, brushes, and other sundries to the side, and the people behind him walked in, immediately attracted by the paintings all over the room. Mo Zhang's works, in particular, are simple and magnificent, full of the profoundness and mystery of human history. Surprisingly, there are many works that have not been exhibited here, including some unfinished paintings. Some knowledgeable guests saw 7 or 8 paintings related to the Maurya dynasty, and couldn't help asking, is this a new work by Mo Zhang? I feel that he has improved a lot. Another person also echoed, the colors of these paintings are bold but not frivolous, and the artistic conception is intriguing. If they are exhibited, they will definitely spark heated discussions. It seems to be the theme of the Maurya dynasty. This kind of theme is rare. Lu Yitong came over and explained with a smile, Mo Zhang likes to draw those forgotten histories very much. The more scarce the historical materials are, the more fascinated he is, and he will go out of his way to collect ancient relics from that period. Talking about her husband, Lu Yitong felt very proud. When she looked at her husband's paintings, her eyes showed appreciation and admiration, but also loss and sadness. This is a very complicated mood. At this time, a guest asked, why do these elephants painted by Mo Zhang have black basilisks growing on them? Do you have any explanation? These are not basilisks, but curses, Lu Yitong said. Curse? What curse? Oh, I also heard from him, it's a local legend. Lu Yitong flipped through from behind, took out another painting, and placed it in front of everyone. The content depicted in the painting is also from that period. Similar colors, similar scenes, similar atmosphere and artistic conception, but there are no elephants in this painting, but an execution ground surrounded by people, and a raging flame is burning in the center of the execution ground. There is a woman's face. Lu Yitong said, the woman in this painting is a witch of Kalinga. When it comes to Kalinga, few people know about it, but when it comes to King Ashoka of the Mauryan dynasty, almost everyone knows it. According to Buddhist legends, Ashoka is a vicious tyrant who killed 99 brothers to secure his throne. 8 years after he formally took the throne, Ashoka conquered Kalinga and brought the Mauryan dynasty to its heyday. Someone heard the words and sighed, history is written by the winners, and the losers have long been turned into ashes. There is no chance for people to know their existence. Lu Yitong smiled, that's right, so there are very few historical materials about Kalinga, only a few sentences are mentioned in the records of Ashoka's cliff edict. According to records, during this war, there were 150,000 Kalinga people were kidnapped and 100,000 people were killed, which can be described as an unprecedented catastrophe. She sighed slightly, and then said, before the war started, there was a witch in the country of Kalinga who advised the king, claiming that she could resist Ashoka's army. This witch can condense resentful souls into a curse, and the cursed war elephant will grow countless snake shadows, sucking all the creatures in front of it. As long as the war elephant of Kalinga is cursed, it can easily resist any enemy, but the king, they thought it was an ominous omen, and regarded witches as devils, tied them to the execution ground and burned them alive. Unbelievable. A customer looked at the painting and muttered, if the king adopted the witch's suggestion, wouldn't history be rewritten? It's just a legend, do you still take it seriously? Haha. Several people joked about it one after another. Lu Yitong laughed and said, actually, I have another interpretation of this legend. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1575. Everyone looked at Lu Yitong, waiting for another version of her. I think it doesn't make sense for a witch to offer advice to the king. Let's not mention how the witch during the slavery period leapfrogged to meet the king. Even if she saw it, didn't she know the danger of doing so? She was burned to death in the end and couldn't escape. It always feels far-fetched. Lu Yitong slowly said, Is it possible that the witch actually has a lover? Because the war came, her lover was conscripted to fight in the army, and the witch knew that Kalinga could not defeat King Ashoka's war elephant army, so in order to save her sweetheart, so she will risk her life to offer advice to the king. Someone immediately laughed, hey, this is a woman, this is a woman. Everything can be related to love, family hatred and national hatred feel far-fetched. Can it be logical to find a sweetheart? I think this version is good, not because of love, but because of the beautified legend, which is more acceptable to people, which reflects a kind of packaging value. For example, the earliest version of the legend of the white snake has nothing to do with love. Relationship: a son happened to meet a young woman in white clothes, because he was greedy for her beauty. Instead of staying there for 3 days, he drank and had fun everywhere, and finally turned into a stream of blood. But won't the beautified version become a household name? Lu Yitong smiled and listened to the discussion among the crowd. People like to explore the story behind each painting, and the story will also give the work an intangible added value. During the discussion, Lu Yitong glanced at Gu Liang, who had been silent all this time. His eyes were staring straight at her, with indifferent gaze, probing and examining. Lu Yitong was stunned for a moment, then smiled back a little nervously, then looked away, no longer looking directly at Gu Liang. Everyone chatted excitedly in the studio. A servant came to look for Lu Yitong, and whispered that 2 police officers had come outside and wanted to ask his wife for some information. Lu Yitong's face changed slightly. She forced a smile at everyone. Excuse me. Everyone looked at each other. Gu Liang pondered for a moment, then followed. As soon as he left, the others lost interest in continuing the discussion and followed to see what was going on. In the living room sat a man and a woman, without uniform, who at first glance could not be identified as police officers, especially one of the women, who was too beautiful. After Lu Yitong came over, they showed their IDs, and the woman stretched out her right hand to her. Hi, I'm Zhang Ci from the Qingjiang City Police Station. I want to ask you for some information. Is it convenient now? To be honest, it's not convenient. However, it is the duty of citizens to assist in the investigation, and we can only put it aside for the time being. Seeing this, the guests left one after another. Lu Yitong had no choice but to exchange pleasantries with them, and agreed to meet again next time. Gu Liang knew Zhang Ci, but he was not very familiar with her. When they met, they smiled and nodded, which was regarded as a greeting. He went to the room to look for Tang Tang, and the two were about to leave. When they passed the living room, Lu Yitong and the police officer were gone, and they must have gone to discuss things elsewhere. Gu Liang thought for a while, and left Lu Yitong's house without stopping any longer. The car went down slowly along the only mountain ring road, and when it was approaching the fork at the foot of the mountain, Gu Liang asked the driver to pull over and stop. Tang Tang followed the car around a few times, and now she was in a daze. Seeing the car stopped, she asked strangely, "What's wrong?" "No hurry, just wait for a while." Gu Liang glanced at the rearview mirror with a thoughtful expression. They waited at the foot of the mountain for about 20 minutes before seeing a car driving down the mountain. Gu Liang beckoned, the car stopped slowly. Zhang Ci stuck half his head out of the car window, and greeted with a smile, "Mr. Gu." At the end, she saw Tang Tang again, and her attitude was more cordial. "Yo, Tang Tang, you're here too. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Blessed to have each other in this life. Mu Shao, your wife is born again." Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1576. Gu Liang said, "Officer Zhang, take 2 steps to speak." Zhang Ci looked at Gu Liang interestingly. She smiled, got out of the car, and walked a few steps away with Gu Liang. "Come here today, Is there any progress on the case? Gu Liang asked. Zhang Xi narrowed her eyes slightly. Mr. Gu, our work has a confidentiality agreement and cannot be leaked. Gu Liang said lightly, if it's an exchange of information, would you consider it? Zhang Xi raised her eyebrows, a little surprised. This case happened in a remote mountain forest, and there were very few insiders. How did Gu Liang know? Could it be a misunderstanding? Mr. Gu, the case I'm investigating may be a little different from what you think. Gu Liang interrupted her and asked directly, you came here today to check on her servants, right? The smile on Zhang Xi's face subsided, and his expression became serious. Gu Liang said in a low voice, it's not too much to use 10 or 20 servants in such a big house, but there are only 2 or 3 servants in her family. Even if the couple like to be quiet, Mo Zhang's paintings are worth hundreds of dollars won. There is no bodyguard, lack of servants, and not even a dog to guard against thieves. It is really unreasonable. Zhang Xi pursed her lips and remained silent. Lu Yitong said that Mo Zhang went out to find inspiration, but I think Mo Zhang didn't leave. Gu Liang glanced at Zhang Xi and said unhurriedly, just now when I visited the couple's studio, I saw an unfinished painting on the canvas. Painting, as a painter, it seems unreasonable to leave the half-finished work and go on a long journey. Zhang Xi was silent for a while, then asked Gu Liang, this case doesn't seem to have anything to do with you, why do you pay attention to this? Gu Liang smiled lightly. It really doesn't matter, because he's already healed, it's just that he's brooding over the situation where he almost died. It may not be useful to say this, but I still hope it can help you investigate the case. Gu Liang said, Mo Zhang has a few paintings that are very special and contain curses. Whoever touches them will be sucked out of their blood, turned into a mummy. If you go to investigate the case, try not to touch those paintings, you would rather believe that there is something than nothing. If you tell other police officers this, you might scoff, but Zhang Xi believes it. Her good friend came back from a dead body, and she had seen Tang Tang's abilities before. Cursing this kind of thing might sound absurd, but it made perfect sense in connection with the circumstances of this case. I came here today because the identity of the newly discovered corpse has been verified. Zhang Xi lowered her voice and told Gu Liang, so far, a total of 3 corpses have been found, one of which is a habitual theft criminal who has been in prison. Curry has his records. Before he died, he planned to burglarize Mo Zhang's house, and sent a very high-profile message to his companions, claiming that Mo Zhang's house did not have servant bodyguards, and it was easy to get it. Speaking of this, Zhang Xi hesitated for a while, her voice lowered. Later, we investigated Mo Zhang and Lu Yitong, and found that the couple had hired a large number of servants in recent months, and all of these people's whereabouts are now unknown. Gu Liang understood, so, the biggest suspects you are targeting now are Mo Zhang and Lu Yitong. They came here today just as a test. Zhang Xi was non-committal, and said, Mr. Gu, I know you have the ability to investigate this matter, but I hope you can stop, because without coordination, your private behavior is likely to affect our police station. Internal plan. Gu Liang smiled lightly, well, I understand, but I want to remind you that this case cannot be solved simply by arresting the person. Take it as a snack, Officer Zhang. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1577. Gu Liang temporarily put aside the matter of Lu Yitong. As Zhang Xi said, he is neither a police officer nor a detective, and it is more appropriate to leave the work of bringing criminals to justice to professionals. As for him, there is only one thing to worry about now, and that is Tang Tang. Tang Tang wants to have a baby. She has always wanted to have a child of her own, and after the Chinese New Year, she was ridiculed by Gu's mother from time to time, blaming her stomach for not moving, and she was even more determined to have a child. But the problem is, a child cannot be born by one person. Gu Liang told her seriously, too often, but it is not easy to get pregnant. She cried loudly, don't you want to have a baby with me? Gu Liang felt that it was useless for him to say it. He still had to go to the hospital and ask the doctor to explain it to her. It would also be good to have an examination by the way. He picked a time and took Tang Tang to the hospital. In the hospital, generally no faults were detected, but some tests took time to wait for the results. The service of the private hospital is very good, there is a special lounge, and after the results come out, there will be a special person to deliver them, so there is no need for patients or family members to run around in line. Gu Liang asked Tang Tang to stay in the waiting room for the time being, and went to the andrology department for an examination by himself. There were only male patients there, so it was inconvenient to take Tang Tang there. Tang Tang waited bored for a while. Occasionally, a pregnant woman passed by the door with her belly in her hands. She couldn't help but glance at it enviously, then glance again. She really wanted to have one, oh no, she really wanted to have two, twins. Give birth to a dozen twins. Probably this is the so-called what is lacking, just make up for it. I heard that someone's childhood was too bleak and their parents didn't buy toys for them. When they grew up, they became parents themselves. They bought toys for their children like crazy, wishing they could fill the whole house. Now Tang Tang can't wait to have a whole house of children. She couldn't help but go out to watch the excitement. There were many people in the obstetrics and gynecology department, and there were pregnant women coming and going. She looked at the big bellies dangling in front of her eyes, and her eyes were so greedy. A woman walked out of the consultation room, and her friend immediately stepped forward and asked, "Are you sure you are pregnant?" The woman frowned. "What did the doctor say?" "I said that if I don't want it, I have to make a decision as soon as possible, alas, I'll go back and discuss it with my husband." Birth. You've been married for several years, and you're going to have a baby sooner or later. No way, I have just been promoted to the position of department head here. If people find out that I am pregnant, I will definitely be replaced. The woman sighed, and this time was too unexpected. I didn't prepare at all. I ran to the copier and printer, and I don't know if I was radiated. She rubbed her stomach, and frowned even tighter. You won't give birth to a fool, will you? The friend followed up and said, that's right, prenatal and postnatal care are still very important. The two walked forward slowly, past Tang Tang, and their voices gradually faded away. Forget it, I don't want it anymore. Let me have a better one next time when I'm fully prepared. Tang Tang didn't quite understand, what kind of department head, what kind of copier, what does it have to do with having a baby? Why does it seem that any trivial matter in life can be a reason to give up the life in the womb? She should be thankful that Gu Liang brought her to a private hospital. If it was a public hospital, what she saw might be even more cruel. This is a cruel world. Tang Tang was dazed for a while, then turned to look at the two women. She unknowingly followed and went downstairs. There are also many pregnant women downstairs, but the atmosphere is quite different, full of depression and depression. Blessed to have each other in this life, Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1578. If my parents knew, they would definitely beat me to death. That's the only way. Their family only recognizes boys, and I can't help it. The company is about to send me abroad, how can I get pregnant at this juncture? Yeah, I don't want to have a baby too early. I don't want to lower the quality of life because of having children. All kinds of voices, all kinds of reasons. Tang Tang couldn't stand it anymore, she couldn't face these at all. Turning around and wanting to leave, I was caught off guard by a woman walking towards me with a dull face, holding a metal vessel in her hand, with a piece of blood smeared inside. It was as if something pierced his forehead, and there was a buzz. Tang Tang closed her eyes and ran out. She panicked and walked very fast along the stairs, her nerves were tense, as if she was terrified. When he was about to run to the door, he finally couldn't bear it any longer, holding onto the doorpost and retching in pain. Not because of pregnancy, but because of pain, nausea, unbearable nausea, just want to spit it all out. A nurse supported her with concern and asked, "Are you okay?" The smell of disinfectant on the other party's body once again irritated Tang Tang severely. She pushed the nurse away and ran out in pain until she ran to the side of the holly in the green belt. She took a deep breath and gradually calmed down. Her head was still buzzing, and her whole body was a little dizzy. She sat down next to the flower bed, looked down and saw that her hands were trembling, and her heart was completely confused. Why? There is a voice in my head repeatedly asking, "Why don't you want me?" After Tang Tang returned home, she went to the study alone, and began to copy scriptures without saying a word. Gu Liang didn't know what was wrong with her, felt that she was not in the right state, and didn't ask why. She was trembling all the time, copying scriptures in a mess. Once, twice, 3 times, her fingers finally calmed down. "Stop trembling." She let out a breath, put down her pen, sat quietly, and closed her eyes. In fact, whether people want children or not has nothing to do with her, but once they bring in their own experience, they feel that it has become their own business, their own suffering, and their own demons. She recited the scriptures she had copied down, feeling much calmer, relieved, and left the study to find Gu Liang. Still greasy and crooked, still acting like a baby, Gu Liang saw that she had regained her spirits, so she didn't ask any more questions. It's just that at night, she fell asleep, crying and screaming in the nightmare, and when Gu Liang woke her up, she looked dazed, and didn't remember that she had the nightmare just now. After several days of this, Gu Liang finally couldn't sit still. He couldn't find Huang Logui, so he called Du Hao over and asked what was going on. Du Hao said, "It should be frightened, and it will gradually get better after a while." In the old days, in order to make the little ghost's hostility stronger, the master of refining ghosts would make it constantly perceive its own death, and die like this several times. After 100 times and thousands of deaths, the pain will be deeply rooted. However, if you don't touch children and pregnant women, it's not a big problem. Tang Tang's reaction to children, especially babies, was indeed much more aggressive than ordinary people. Gu Liang still remembers that she was sent to the hospital after breaking her hand, and would have nightmares every night, sometimes calling mom and sometimes asking "Why don't you want me?" but she didn't realize it after waking up, and she still smiled innocently without any worries. Now, again. He sighed heavily in his heart, he really shouldn't have taken her to the hospital. "Can I just wait for her to get better?" Gu Liang asked, "Is there no other way?" Du Hao hesitated a little, and said, "If you have the ashes of her original life, you can do a ritual to calm the nerves, but..." However, Tang Tang's ashes had already been made into a dagger. The dagger is now missing. Gu Liang thought for a while, got up and opened the safe in the study, took out a black and blue dagger, and gently placed it in front of Du Hao. "Use this." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Blessed to have each other in this life. Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1579. That night, Tang Tang had a good night's sleep. At dawn, she opened her eyes, feeling refreshed, not as tired as usual when she slept for a long time but seemed not asleep. The pillow was empty, Gu Liang was not by her side, his voice could be heard faintly outside the door. It's really strange, why did Gu Liang get up so early? Tang Tang got out of bed and put on slippers, and was about to look for him, when he just walked to the door, he saw the dagger in his hand through the gap in the door. She froze. Then he closed his eyes in disbelief, and opened them again. That's right, it was her dagger. Holding the dagger, Gu Liang said to Du Hao, "Thank you for your hard work today. It's a small matter, you are serious, but this dagger must be put away. If there is trouble in the future, there will be something to rely on. The little devil is very sinister, and it will not be done overnight. It takes 3 to 5 years to cultivate in the mountains, not to mention that in this secular world, there are many disturbances, and it is even more difficult to resolve." Gu Liang nodded in thanks and asked someone to send Du Hao back. A slight sound came from the room. Gu Liang was slightly stunned, turned around and gently opened the door. Tang Tang was lying on his side on the bed and fast asleep. Maybe it was the sound from turning over just now. Seeing her sleeping, Gu Liang couldn't help turning his mouth slightly, and gently touched her cheek, then left the bedroom with a knife. Tang Tang opened his eyes, his pupils flickered, and he didn't know what he was thinking. Although he had done the ritual, he was still a little worried. Gu Liang didn't go to the company that day, and stayed with Tang Tang at home, and went to the study to deal with work matters. Tang Tang also squeezed into the study room with him, brought her pen, ink, paper and inkstone, spread it out on the other end of his desk, and began to copy scriptures. She copied carelessly, with a bunch of typos, and she could make half of the 10 words wrong. Gu Liang laughed at her. "I have been copying the scriptures for so long, and I have never written down the whole text smoothly." Tang Tang snorted and threw away the pen. "It's because the pen doesn't work well. The paper isn't good either. Go get someone else a new one." Gu Liang looked at her with a smile. "What kind of pen and paper should I use to be considered easy to use?" She thought for a while, then smiled brightly. "After you get the pen and paper, kiss them. It will become easier to use." Gu Liang was really helpless. He bent his fingers and tapped her forehead. "If you think ink is not easy to use later, do I have to eat ink? Are you going to get it or not?" Tang Tang entered the coquettish mode. "Go, I'll go now." Gu Liang got up and left the study, and went to the room where Tang Tang usually copied scriptures to get new pens and paper. Tang Tang waited for the footsteps to go away, and immediately ran to the safe and squatted down, stretched out her hand to pull the door, and did not move at all. She studied it carefully. There are 3 ways to open the safe: password, fingerprint, and key. She tried 2 passwords indiscriminately, none of which worked. When he was racking his brains thinking about what number Gu Liang would use as a password, he had already returned to the study. Seeing Tang Tang tinkering with her safe, Gu Liang was taken aback for a moment, then laughed. "Naughty again." Tang Tang turned to look at him, not panicking at all, with a look of resentment on his face. "Why can't this one be opened? If you can open it casually, is it still called a safe?" Gu Liang asked with a smile. Tang Tang pouted and said, "Of course I know it's a safe, but I've tried many numbers, and they're all wrong. Your birthday, and the end number of your credit card are all wrong. Using your birthday as a password means you want someone to crack it, right? Your password must be your ex-girlfriend's birthday." He couldn't laugh or cry. "Okay, stop messing around." Tang Tang walked back with her mouth pursed, depressed. "It must be my ex-girlfriend's birthday. You don't love me." The male protagonists in TV dramas always use their sweetheart's birthday as their password. Blessed to have each other in this life. Mu Shao, your wife is born again. Author, Hua Hua Liao. Chapter 1580. It is not impossible to change it to birthday. As long as the order of numbers is slightly adjusted, it will be difficult for others to guess. Just as Gu Liang was about to agree, he suddenly realized that the birthday he knew was Ruanzimo's, not Tang Tang's. "Tang Tang, when is your birthday?" Tang Tang was stunned. When Gu Liang saw her stunned, he was also stunned. A birthday is a person's date of birth, but Tang Tang has never been born, so, she has no birthday. Tang Tang pursed her mouth and sat back in silence. Gu Liang thought for a while, took her hand, and pulled her over. Why? Tang Tang's tone was fierce. You can set a fingerprint password, I will input your fingerprint, and you can open it even if you don't remember the number in the future. Gu Liang operated the button a few times, held Tang Tang's hand and put it on, repeated 3 times, and the system issued a beep. Okay, try it. Gu Liang let go of her. Tang Tang looked at him inexplicably, hesitated for a moment, and put his finger on it. Beep. The door of the safe opened. She opened her eyes slightly, unable to believe it would be so easy, and slowly opened the heavy metal door, which contained some documents. There is no dagger. How come? This morning, she secretly followed him, and saw him take the dagger into the study with her own eyes, and heard the sound of the safe being opened, metal objects put in, and then the safe being closed again. Why not? Gu Liang gently stroked her hair, with a soft voice, are you satisfied now? You can also put things in it later. Tang Tang didn't speak. She stared blankly into the safe, never realizing more clearly than at this moment, so, he has been guarding against me. Okay, let's copy the scriptures. Gu Liang closed the door of the safe, took her back to the table, and arranged the pens, inks, papers and inkstones one by one. Deist Miao Ching told me that I have to copy it every day. So much, I can only write it again. Tang Tang didn't write for a long time, her thoughts stayed on the missing dagger, and she didn't have the heart to copy the scriptures. Seeing her in a daze, Gu Liang smiled, leaned closer and lowered his head to kiss the back of her hand, saying, now the hands are easier to use, write quickly, don't make typos anymore. Tang Tang came back to her senses, her eyes fell on the face of the man in front of her. He is very handsome, not as stunning as the Mu family man, but he is good looking, the more he looks the more interesting, especially when he is gentle, he is considerate, thoughtful, affectionate, and can make the most ferocious prey willing to be captured. Then what if they read it wrong? What if they read the wrong word? Tang Tang snorted softly, you still have to kiss your eyes and mouth. Gu Liang smiled and said, I should kiss your brain. You called me stupid. Tang Tang got up angrily, and rushed towards Gu Liang with all her teeth and claws. A few days later, Gu Liang opened the safe to take an important document. Stretching his hand in, he touched a lump of wet and soft stuff. He was slightly startled, and immediately withdrew his hand. Looking carefully, he saw lumps of earthworms coiled on the file bag. It's still fresh, probably not long after it was put in. Gu Liang took a deep breath, endured the nausea, went to the bathroom to wash his hands, came out to settle accounts with Tang Tang, but no one was seen, and finally saw Tang Tang outside in the garden through the bedroom window. She was squatting beside the flower bed, digging the soil, and there was a small bucket beside her. Gu Liang couldn't bear it anymore, opened the window and shouted, Tang Tang. Tang Tang trembled in fright, then dropped the keg and ran away swiftly. Gu Liang held his forehead with a headache, thinking what happened to her? It seems that he hasn't messed with her recently.